Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports podcast presented by Underdog. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. We've got plenty of football to talk about, and not just the Chiefs. We'll get to them later in the show and introduce you to our new Chiefs beat writer, Pete Sweeney. But first, the college football season opened last weekend with a handful of games, and the slate included Kansas State and Kansas. The results were mixed. The Wildcats fell to Iowa State in Dublin, Ireland, while KU defeated Fresno State in the first game of the renovated David Booth Memorial Stadium. Kicking off today's show are Kellis Robinett, who covers K-State, and Shreyas Laddha, who covers the Jayhawks. It's good to be with you guys. And Kellis, are you over the jet lag?
I'm almost there, I think. Really close. I woke up this morning feeling maybe 80% full energy, so I'm getting there. Honestly, the only point in the whole trip I felt super tired was getting off the plane in Dublin when it was like 3:30 a.m. Kansas time. That was kind of rough. But staying awake all day, forcing myself not to, just pass out so I would at least get on Dublin time. That was difficult, but coming back, not so bad. Landed, went to sleep, went through the motions yesterday, and now we're back at it for week one.
Yeah, and unlike the NFL, when those teams go overseas or play in different countries, they usually get a couple, if not the bye week the next week, at least a couple of days. Like the Chiefs are opening in Brazil on a Friday, and then they play the following Sunday. The Wildcats are right back in it. There is no – they play on Saturday in Ireland and Saturday in Manhattan.
Yeah, and then, there's no jet lag for Kansas, but they're going even quicker. They're playing on Friday. That's a bold move. Some college teams have gone over there and played in that game and decided, let's give ourselves some extra time off. Kansas State and Iowa State both did a lot of research on it and decided that, the better way to do it is just to put an FCS team at home in game 2 and just keep rolling. I guess you give your team too much time off. Maybe that, can backfire as well.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the games itself, I want to talk to both of you about the atmospheres of the games. Shreyas, that was a sight that I haven't seen too often in Lawrence on Saturday. Not just a filled stadium, but students making up a big part of that crowd. And of course, Kansas rewarded them with a great performance. But to see the student section go all the way from basically the bottom to the top in a few sections, that was wild. I don't know if you've seen that in the times you've been covering KU.
Yeah, I think it was the most impressive game I've seen in the booth. I think the only one comparable might be the Kansas-Oklahoma game a couple of years ago when Kansas upset number 6 Oklahoma as they went the last matchup in the Big 12. That was a crazy game. The atmosphere for that was loud. Obviously, different opponents here, Fresno State versus Oklahoma, but I was impressed. The student section was there, felt like mostly throughout the game. Goff talked about how impressed he was from the students and just the overall atmosphere, and the place is packed. There was a lot of hope. There was a lot of expectations, and Kansas delivered.
Yeah. So Travis Goff, the athletic director, big victory for him on Saturday. That was a great atmosphere, and KU played well. We'll talk about that in just a second. Kellis, it looked good on television. The rain kind of muddied the game and muddied the field, but it really looked good. I mean, it to me, it looked like a miniature version. We're talking about Iowa State, K-State, of Texas OU, where they play in the Cotton Bowl, and half of the stadium is burnt orange, and the other half is that crimson color. It looked that way with purple and red on last weekend in Dublin.
Yeah, that's a great comparison, and I'll stand by this. I think pregame, like the 30 minutes leading up to the game, that was the most electric atmosphere I've probably ever been in. And it makes sense. If you're going to fly 5,000 miles to watch a football game, you're not going to show up and sit on your hands. You're going to be pumped up and loud. Those fans were into it. I sat down and press row in my seat maybe 45 minutes before game time, and the place was darn near packed right then. Everybody just screaming, yelling. And then they brought out somebody to sing the Irish national anthem as well as the American anthem, and people loved that. come halftime, like you said, once the rain started falling and stuff, it started feeling a little less electric. But those minutes leading up to the game, that is the only thing I could really compare it to would be like when Kansas State played Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl once in like an 80,000 seat stadium right down the middle. That was pretty electric. But yeah, it was wild to have a game feel like a bowl or a playoff game in the very first week of the season.
And those were the first two Big 12 teams to play in that game, which is an annual game, the Aer Lingus Classic, and the Big 12 team's going next year. TCU is playing North Carolina in that game a year from now. So, all right, Kellis, what happened? That was Kansas State goes over there as 3-point favorite, and they lose 24. They have the score right, 24-21, and Iowa State took a knee at the end. Could have made it a bigger score, but just such a disappointment for the Wildcats. They went over there with high hopes. Listen, it was in our minds a toss-up game. These are two teams that we figured could play for the Big 12 championship at the end of the season. Someone was going to lose it, but it turned out to be the favorite who lost this game. What was your takes from what happened to the Wildcats?
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing about it is you say, man, Kansas State really let one slip away. The hard part for them is that it's just the same story we see year in, year out with Iowa State. Matt Campbell just seems to have Chris Kleiman's number. He's won 5 of the last 6, 3 in a row. And the crazy thing about it is other than the COVID year when Iowa State just spanked K-State 45-0, all those wins have been close. They come down to the end. Like you said, Iowa State could have gone up by another touchdown late, took a knee, but the same time, Kansas State, if they stop Iowa State on a 4th and 3, they get the ball back and they get a chance to win. So it went down the wire, much like all these Farmageddon games do. But the real difference just seems to be every year when it's time for either coach to make a bold move, Matt Campbell does it and it pays off. Chris Kleiman does it and it goes the other way. And that's pretty much what happened here. Iowa State 3 for 3 on 4th downs. Kansas State 1 for 4, and 2 times when they had 4th and 1 and they needed to just plow forward and get it, they couldn't move the chains. And I guess the discouraging part is when their backs were against the wall and they were down 7 and down 10. New offensive coordinator Matt Wells asked Avery Johnson to air it out a little bit, and it worked. You got a long touchdown pass to Jace Brown, long touchdown pass to Jaron Bradley. But they were a little bit too conservative when the game was closer. I think they'd have been better served just airing it out, hurting Iowa State through the passing game. Maybe if they'd have done that, they'd ended up winning.
So turnovers marked the game early. I think each team had a couple of fumbles in the first half, and Dylan Edwards didn't get to play after his one touch of the ball. Right? What's the he got injured? What was the injury, and what's the latest on Dylan Edwards?
Yeah, so it was a weird deal. He got injured and just immediately ran off the field. It didn't look like he was hurt at all. But if you go back and look at slow-mos of the tackle and the scrum for the loose ball that he muffed, an Iowa State defender did roll right on top of his right ankle. And it's easy to see maybe he got twisted in there and he just didn't feel right going back in. I do wonder if psychologically it's got to be hard to go out in a game like that, first big moment of the season, and you muff the punt. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it did. I really have nothing to speculate there, but it's just an interesting side plot to all this. If he'd taken it to the house for a touchdown and gotten it tackled that way, maybe adrenaline's running and he wants to come back in. Just hard to say, but rolled his ankle, tested it out of the sideline, never came back in. Tough blow for Kansas State because when he's on, he can be their best offensive player. You saw it last year in the Rape Bowl when he goes for over 200 yards and a couple touchdowns, wins MVP. They wanted to get him in space and have him be a focal point in the offense in this game. Didn't happen. Had to go to Joe Jackson, and he only rushed for about 50 yards. So a little bit of a drop off there. They're hoping to have him back soon. Chris Kleiman said X-rays on the ankle were negative. I had somebody tell me he was wearing a boot on the plane coming home from Ireland. So it does seem like he was a little bit banged up there, but hoping to have him back sooner than later. No long-term damage, at least.
Okay. Well, doesn't matter because the season's over, right? I mean, they lost the opener. It's almost September. And now, anyway, there's that's the thing about playing a 9-game conference schedule. Plenty of opportunities for the Wildcats to come back. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but the teams that played in the Big 12 championship game last year, Arizona State and Iowa State, join two other teams at 7-2 on top of the standings, right? So I don't look at this as a year where the Big 12 winner is going to be 9-0 or 8-1. Like Arizona State, the team that ended up winning the Big 12 last year, lost their games kind of early, I think, to Cincinnati. It was one of them. Anyway, it's I think Kansas State's going to be fine, and this is still a good team. Avery Johnson did show me in that offense did show me something, especially in the second half. So, how did Chris Kleiman kind of spin the game afterwards, and how can he kind of quell the doomsayers?
Yeah, he pretty much took the same approach as you. One loss is just one loss. Doesn't matter if it happens in game 1 or game 12. And I certainly agree with that. I'm not going to sit here and say that Kansas State's season is over or anything like that because they lost this game. Iowa State, I think, will be right there at the end of the season as one of the teams that can make the Big 12 championship game. And to lose to them by 3, it's not the worst loss ever. Like we just said here, Kansas State typically does lose to Iowa State. The one troubling trend is, though, that Kansas State, the one time they won the Big 12 under Chris Kleiman was the year they did beat Iowa State. So every time they haven't done it, it's come back to hurt them. And the hard thing is that they're just behind the 8 ball already. They're 0-1 in the Big 12. And like you said, I think they can afford one more loss and still be in the championship conversation. But to do it with 3 would be difficult. So that's kind of where they're looking at now. One loss doesn't define a season, but their margin for error is gone. And one stat I'll throw out there that is a little bit worrying moving forward. Now, admittedly, this is a small sample size, but the Aer Lingus College Football Classic, they've played it annually for the last 4 years. No team in that time that's ever lost this game has even had a winning season. The last 3 teams that lost in Ireland have got a combined 11-25. You saw what Florida State did last year. They just totally bombed. I don't think that happens to Kansas State. It's such a small sample size. The teams you're looking at are Nebraska under Scott Frost, Navy, and Florida State last year. It could just be some epic train wrecks that is not associated with Kansas State. They'll be fine. But it just shows that losing that first game in Ireland, it can take it out of you, and that's something they have to be cognizant of moving forward.
You get kind of a whiskey hangover of a season from the loss. So, okay, well, let's and I like that you mentioned the K-State's lack of success against the Cyclones in recent years, because I find that to be so interesting with the way K-State has owned KU while Iowa State has owned K-State. And here's KU winning 3 of the last 4 against Iowa State. So kind of a weird circle among these 3 schools in the Big 12 that's hard to explain. Well, KU is 1-0 now all time against Fresno State with a big win, 31-7 at the booth. Shreyas, we call it a renovation, a reimagine, or a fixer-upper. What's the proper description of what Kansas did with its stadium?
I use the word newly renovated in the last probably 15 articles I've written about it. I think that's the proper word that I'm sticking with that, because at this point that's what Kansas has called it. I know there's a couple of Kansas fans that comment. I think there's a Kansas fan that comments on half the articles, and it's like, this is not a renovation. It's a newly imagined stadium, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, I'm just using the wording that Travis Goff is using, And I think Travis made a joke about it on Twitter a couple weeks ago. Is like, Michael, this is, I think he was telling one of the other beat writers, this is not a renovated stadium. This is a new stadium, but they call it renovated. So I'm sticking with renovated. And it was an impressive day for Kansas football in the renovated David Booth, Kansas.
Right.
World.
And to be technical about it, 2/3 of it's new.
Yes.
A third of it's still the 1923 or 1921 stadium. So, but that's on its way out, and because of another Booth contribution leading the way to completely renovate or the stadium. But anyway, the play of Kansas was just excellent on both sides of the ball. I was at the game sitting next to you, and I was so impressed with Jalen Daniels, unsure of what to expect from the KU quarterback after seeing him struggle mightily at the first half of last season, and ended up with more. I think he led the Big 12 in interceptions with 12 a year ago. He was the same quarterback who helped him win 3 straight games over ranked opponents in the second half of the season, but he got off to such a shaky start a year ago. He got off to a superb start this year. What did you see from Jalen Daniels?
He was in complete control, with his legs, with his arm, like whatever you needed him to do, he would do it and did it with ease. I was super impressed with his decision making with the ball. There was no questionable throws. I feel like sometimes with Jalen, there's like 1 or 2 throws in a game. You're like, what was he seeing there? He had none of that. I think that was the best game he's had since the 2023 season. Like the last time I saw him look this good was when Kansas played Illinois at home that 2023 season, right before he got hurt with his back injury. Last year, I know he had some good games, but I just felt like he was confident. He was free flowing. And I think sometimes he has a little rust in the beginning of the season. He didn't seem to have that. And I was just super impressed with, his ability to kind of maneuver out of the pocket. KU's offensive line was struggling at points in the first half, and it felt like he should have been sacked a lot more, if not for his quick thinking, quick feet. And I was just very impressed because, this is an important year for Jalen, and he knows it. He's talked about it. This is the year for him to really rise his draft stock and make, and, we've seen guys go from late round picks to, first or second round guys just because they have a really good year.
Well, he's not gonna get another one. This is year number 6 for Jalen Daniels. He better show it now, and he did in a big way. It was not just his play; it was his executing the offense. And they've got the new coordinator this year. Of course, it's been the quarterback's coach who has been with Jalen Daniels the entire time under Lance Leipold. But no, it was. I just thought I saw some creativity in that offense that I hadn't seen in a couple of years. So, what can we say about the relationship now between Jalen Daniels and Jim Zebrowski?
There's a lot of trust in both sides. Jalen has talked about it. They've been together for 5 years. They have a lot of trust to do things, to go for it in fourth down. I think, Jeff Grimes, you can say what you want about him, but he was a little more conservative in his approach of play calling. I think there was a learning curve on both ends. I asked Jalen about it after the game of do you feel like there's like no learning curve? He's like, well, I've been with him for 5 years now. Coach Zebrowski's a guy that I trust, and he trusts me. And I think that relationship goes a long way where when they're making adjustments to the line, where they're doing line shifts, Jalen's out there and able to do it. And I think, it was a lot of a long time coming, him becoming offensive coordinator. I had a former Kansas player tell me, when Grimes left and Zebrowski got elevated, there was always that, like, why did this happen earlier? There was a thought process within the team, like no disrespect to Grimes. A lot of guys thought he was very nice, but, Zebrowski looked really good as an offensive coordinator in that UNLV game, bowl game. That was his only time. And I think the creativity that he displayed is like the closest Kansas offense looks since Andy Kotelnicki left for Penn State. I think it was a tremendous game by him, play calling wise, but also just like, it's been a long time since I've seen Kansas wide receivers that open. I think last year there was a lot of issues, with the offense, and one of them was a compounding issue of guys were just not getting open until the latter half of the year. And it forced Jalen to throw into some tight windows. I felt like guys like Keaton Kubaka got his first touchdown, he was wide open. Cam Pickett, another touchdown, wide open. I was super, super impressed by the play calling, the trust on both ends. And they weren't conservative. I think, in college football, maybe this is just me being me, but I think you should always, if there's an opportunity around midfield, you should go for it in fourth down. The analytics kind of support it, but also I just don't trust college football defenses to stop a 4th and third.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And look, the football's heading in that direction anyway. You're seeing more leave the punter on the side and let's go for it. So, okay. So, Friday for KU, next game against FCS Wagner, small school in New York. After that, big game, the Missouri game, the border war. Cannot wait for KU-MU at Columbia on September. Is it the 6th? Is it if I got the date right? Yes. But it's that Saturday. Should be fantastic atmosphere, great fun, and game that a lot of people in the Kansas City area and all of college football have been waiting to see for a long time since the school split their conference affiliation about 15 years ago. Okay, Kellis, Robinett, Shreyas, Laddha, great conversation. Really appreciate you guys. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk Chiefs football, and you will meet Pete Sweeney.
Take a swing at picking sports this baseball season with Underdog. Playing on their app is as easy as choosing higher or lower on players' stats. Get them right, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money. Sign up today using promo code KCSTAR to get a gimme pick as a part of your first cash entry, plus up to $1,000 in bonus credits when you deposit. Must be 18 plus and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org.
We're back on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports Podcast with Sam McDowell, and for the first time, drum roll please, Pete Sweeney. Pete, welcome to the Star.
Yeah, it is a long time coming. I think we kind of talked about it for a long time, how cool it would be, and obviously congrats to Jesse and ready to get going here.
Yeah, it's funny how one move by a media member covering the Chiefs sets in motion a series of dominoes that brought you to us.
Right. And that we have to thank, of course, we love everyone's favorite curmudgeon, Adam Teicher, now enjoying the mountains of Colorado. We think about him a lot. He's the best. But yeah, it kind of spilled into a couple shakeups, and it's just great to be here.
I love how Adam doesn't mind sharing his leisure with us.
Yeah.
Especially during those San Joe trips, yeah.
Right. He did remind us that he was relaxing during St. Joe for sure.
Yeah. So 8 years at Arrowhead Pride, and Channel 41, 810 currently, previously 610. I don't know if there's a media spot that you've missed here in town, but you've been all over the place. You've been covering the Chiefs one way or the other since 2014, and I picked them up the next year. But
right.
So that's how long we've been doing this. Sam has been here all along as well, and an Emmy Award winner. I thought that was the most interesting thing on your profile. You've won an Emmy.
Surprising, yeah. Surprising thing, yeah.
Well, that was during my initial time with Chiefs.com. I was the host of, I think the show was called Chiefs Replay. And I think part of it is their production is just so much better than local television. It's a mid-America Emmy. Like let's keep that clear of. So we're not talking about one of these national Emmys, but
I accept you're a quarter away to the EGOT.
That's right. I'm getting to work. I gave it to my mom. I don't even have it with me. She loves it. She shows it off to all of her friends that come. But the competition is just a little different because you've seen the Chiefs production. They just have all cameras and bodies. And a lot of times you're going up against the local TV. So I'll take the Emmy. But again, we had a lot of help, during that time. I think it was, now like 9 years ago. Yeah.
So your first story for the Star was projecting the Chiefs' 53-man roster, which appeared today. And of course, by the time that most people hear this podcast, the Chiefs will have finalized their 53-man roster. So we're a little bit dated. Still, we're on the interesting side of things. What were the biggest challenges in breaking down this year's roster?
Yeah, I think for me, the Chiefs really wanted to have Elijah Mitchell or Carson Steele step up in the running back room, and it didn't really seem like either really grab the bull by the horns. We'll see if, by the time this comes out, one of them makes it, or maybe there's an outside running back that is on the team. Wide receiver got interesting. We were always thinking that Shreyas would have been suspended, which would have allowed the Chiefs to maybe keep one of Brownlee or Remigio, but things shifted in that and could be available at the beginning of the season, which means he'll be on the roster. And, you wonder about Brownlee. Tight end room, same type of thing. Jared Wiley hasn't really looked like himself. Not really his fault. He had the ACL last year. And so we went back and forth of whether or not he would be on the roster. Ultimately, we put him on. And then offensive line, you would think that they would want to keep a 10th, but you have all these other issues with the rest of the offense, as I was talking about. So we ended up going 9 there. But like anything, again, by the time you're hearing this, those decisions might have gone the other way.
Generally speaking, you try to come up with 25 offensive players and 25 on defense.
It's a safe thing to do, yeah.
Yep, safe thing, because you have the 3 specialists, Harrison Butker, Matt Araiza, and James Winchester. it hasn't always been that way, but generally speaking, that's the objective, right?
Many times it's 25 and 25. I remember seeing 26 and 24. I think it was a year or two ago. So sometimes you make that sacrifice on one side of the ball or the other, but that is a good rule as you're doing this exercise, is to try to have 25 and 25 because that's the most common.
I think that what's different about this year's roster is typically when you formulate, I think probably anyone who covers their local team always anticipates, hey, if they cut this guy, somebody's going to pick him up. And it typically just does not work that way. Like the guys that even the Chiefs cut, a Super Bowl, contender every year, their guys typically don't get picked up by somebody else. But you still sort of anticipate, okay, if they cut, and I think this year, in training camp, Jason Brownlee's been terrific. He was really good in the first preseason game, not as great in the last 2 preseason games, but still that was maybe one of the guys you thought, okay, somebody's going to pick this guy up. He's an NFL player. Somebody's going to pick him up. This year, I feel the opposite on it, to be honest. Like, I feel like whatever formula you guys are using, and I think I'm only one off on what the projection that you guys made, I think a lot of the guys, even they're keeping, would not get picked up. Nico Remigio is not going to get picked up, I think, by somebody else. I also put him on my roster, as you guys did, because no one else on the team do you feel confident catching a punt, for example. Like, you have to have somebody you feel confident in just the catch aspect of the return. And I don't know who else that is. So, okay, you keep Remigio, but I don't like the data shows that if somebody gets cut in the past and they've been on a practice squad, they're typically going to make it through waivers on the initial 53 wave. So I just, you could actually cut Mike Pennell and bring him back because he's a vested veteran. He doesn't have to go through waivers. There's another way you could create a spot. The defensive line, I think, is interesting. Like, you guys ended up cutting Jerry Tillery with the addition of Derek Nottie, but Malik Herring's on the roster. Who's going to pick Malik? Like, he's not going to get picked up. I think they've got a few options to where the risk of those guys getting picked up, but then you go to where you guys mentioned with Esa Pole, and I think he might get picked up. Even if he's not one of the best 53 guys now, I think people view him in a certain way to say, I could make something out of that guy. And so I'm not going to be surprised, even though I initially also did not. I kept 9 offensive linemen, as you guys did. But I could see Pole getting picked up, and therefore, do you fiddle with the math and maybe the initial 53 doesn't actually look similar in numbers by position that we've seen this team go with in the past?
I want to just go back to the one point you made about Pennell, and I think it's just worth describing a little bit more to what could be a casual fan or just a fan who's into it but didn't really realize this. Players with 4 or less years of accrued service go right to waivers. A guy like Mike Pennell, who we know loves being in the state of Missouri, loves this area, close to family, has come back.
Yeah.
He might say to Brett Veach, I'm cool. And because of his more than 4 years, of course, he gets released rather than waived. So he's not subject to being able to be picked up. And then you have the 2 elevations. And so elevate him if you want from a practice squad situation. You could use up those elevations, and then you'd have to put him on the team. By then, there might be an injury. I mean, we saw an injury that kind of threw a wrinkle into it with Felix, done for the year. And so there are these little procedural things that you could do that the Chiefs sometimes take advantage of. And that theory would allow you to keep Tillery on the roster and then almost just have a 54th player, at least for the first couple weeks of the season.
So what was who was your player that we didn't have?
So you guys had, first of all, I did mine right before the Derek Nottie trade.
Okay.
So that's an interesting wrinkle. And you guys had done something that I really hadn't considered, which is just take Jerry Tillery out rather than taking like Malik Herring out, which, once I saw that you guys had done that, I thought that actually probably is the way to go. I initially did not have Cooper McDonald on the roster. I totally agree with you that the Chiefs are high on him. He played well again in the 3rd preseason game. So I don't know whether this would be cheating or maybe even the inverse of cheating. I projected 4 running backs and said they're going to acquire somebody before the 53. And therefore, I agree with you guys. I don't think Elijah Mitchell has looked good at all in camp. Carson Steele playing deep into the 4th quarter for the first time in the 3rd preseason game is not a great sign. I also don't think it's a great sign that he hasn't been involved in returning kicks this year when they need bodies at that spot and he's not part of it. So I think Carson Steele is on the outside. Also, the guy who runs a 4.75 is probably not going to be picked up. He's not a fullback, even though people like to call him a fullback. He is a running back. So I just had, okay, they'll acquire somebody before the 53, and it's a running back.
The Herring thing is, I think his job potentially on the 53 was saved by Felix getting hurt.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could have kept Herring because I think Felix would have made the roster. And I think, again, back to Remigio, I just think he's the ultimate change your wild card, because I think ideally they would have liked to have seen Brashard Smith look a little bit more sure as a returner, and that really would have changed the math of being able to keep, what could be a fourth tight end, a 10th offensive lineman. Cooper McDonald wouldn't be, as much of an issue of trying to get him on the roster, but it just, Remigio is just so far and above every other return option that you add him on the team and you have to make some tough decisions.
Yeah, and the McDonald thing that's interesting that sort of materialized after the Seattle game is they got really injured in the Seattle game. So Najee Johnson's hurt, Jack Cochran's hurt, and so for a team that's toggled between 5 and 6 linebackers, well, one of your linebackers is hurt. The other one is a 5th-round rookie who's continuing to learn the defense. You might think, okay, you do need a 6th linebacker instead, because those are your special teams guys. Like Jack Cochran's a special teams player. If we don't know the seriousness of his injury, but if he's going to be out, you probably do need to keep a 6th linebacker, and that helps Cooper McDonald. And Najee Johnson's just interesting to me because he ran with the ones all throughout camp, and I don't think any of us were impressed with the camp that Najee Johnson had, and now he's hurt. So, look, the Chiefs surprise us literally every year. Something surprises us every year with the 53, and I just don't know that we should consider Najee Johnson a lock right now.
The only reason that I continue to feel like he is just the way that Spagnuolo talks about him. And, I felt this way, and sometimes I do, and I always kind of joke about it. I felt this way, like watching Kingsley during camp and then watching Najee. It's like, you're just a mere reporter, and this is the best offensive coach maybe in NFL history and the best defensive coach in NFL history. And you're just like, I'm not seeing it, guys, but I know we need to trust you. And I feel that way about Najee Johnson, but I just think they continue to regard him so highly that it's just hard for me to make that cut. Joshua Williams is another interesting player, and I think depending on the severity of injuries at defensive back, he may end up making it, at least initially. And we considered that, but he just has seemed to be buried. So
I think Joshua Williams makes somebody else's roster
without a doubt. Yeah,
53. Yeah, and that is, if you're looking for a running back, does that team need a cornerback? And like usually this time of year, you see the Derek Nottie type trades, 7 or Sky Moore type trades. Okay, just swap a 7 for a 6. We'll give you the player. He's not going to make our team anyway. And that's what the Jets were feeling. That's what the Chiefs were feeling in the Sky Moore deal. Like, but you might see a player for player type of deal. And, the Chiefs, the last player for player deal I recall was the one they made out really well with, which was Charvarius Ward for Parker Anger. And I don't know if there's another team out there that might have an extra running back that, okay, we'll give you a player instead of the draft pick here.
Just one more thing on McDonald, and again, we included him. We'll see. Again, who knows when you're hearing this, but tryout player, just tried out during what I think was a rookie camp. Somehow makes it to the 90-man roster, and then just has played so well in the preseason that it becomes risky to cut him and have him go to waivers. And so, quietly, because I don't know how many people are talking about it, that may end up being the best story, color-wise, of the 53-man cutdown.
I think you were trying to high him a little bit.
Yeah.
3 colleges. He was signed out of TCU, but he played previously at, I think, San Diego State, and I can't remember the original college. But great story. And I think Brett Veach said on the broadcast Friday night that he's a guy that Chiefs Kingdom should get to know. Mm-hmm. So you always look for little clues in what you hear from coaches or Brett Veach, and that's one of them. So, well, we went 11 minutes, more than 11 minutes, without bringing up Kingsley Suamataia, But we did, and we cannot let a podcast pass without evaluating the play of Kingsley. I thought he did pretty well Friday night against the Bears.
Yeah, I thought he was really good. I thought their entire offensive line was really good, and more broadly, that their offense was great. I mean, they connected on a deep ball. I thought they brought back a play with Rashee Rice with the bubble screen that they didn't have in their playbook last year. Just a lot of reasons to, like, if you think the Chiefs' offense is going to be better this year than it was last year, you saw all the reasons why in a preseason game. But it all has to depend on the offensive line being better than it was. Like, you cannot hit on that deep ball if your offensive line doesn't have the protection it had. And the Bears are playing their number one defensive line there. So it's not like they had some sort of easy assignment, but I think we're all probably in the avenue of we'd like to see more from Kingsley Suamataia before you just determine, okay, he's going to be fine. But we just hadn't seen like a foundation for him yet. And I think he's a player based on getting benched last year who needs confidence. And if nothing else, he should feel more confident after playing that game against the Bears.
It isn't a long time that they're out there in the preseason game. And so you only have so many snaps, and you look at those first two games and you're like, oh, they're continuing to put him out there. And I think, there's an energy among the team that if they were to replace him quickly again, he may never be able mentally to feel like he's a starter in the NFL. And so they're giving him a little bit longer leash. And honestly, on Friday night, if you look at some of the PFF numbers in what was true pass sets, he had 7. He got the third best pass blocking grade on the team. And as far as starters go, just right behind Josh Simmons, didn't allow any pressures. And so, man, did he need that, because I don't think you would have wanted to go into Brazil and the Chargers after those first two games. I feel like he wouldn't have had the confidence you need to be a true left guard starter in the NFL. So good for him. I think he proved to everybody that he deserves a shot here. We'll see how long it lasts. Last year it was 2 games. Once the real bullets start flying, but telling, I thought, because we had been debating amongst ourselves whether Jalen Moore would push for a role with the starting rotation, but I think it was as clear as day. Patrick Mahomes comes out of the game, and the top 5 guys come out. So against the Bears, Jalen Moore never played a star or never played a rep with Patrick Mahomes, and so he right now for the time being becomes your swing tackle.
Did either of you guys get to talk with Kingsley after the game? I didn't. I think he did hold court with.
Yeah, I think our other columnist who's on vacation did speak with him.
But,
Vahe did. Yeah, he heard that I was starting today, and he said, "I'm getting out of town." He said, "I don't want to be here."
That is so Vahe.
Yeah,
so Vahe. All right, guys, great conversation as always. Pete, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
And a big thanks to our producers, Monty Davis and Randy Mason, to our editors, Jeff Rosen and Scott Chasen. This has been SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star Sports Podcast, presented by Underdog. We'll do it again soon.